downstairs to see her brother. The hay fever had worried him a good deal all night. His head ached, his eyes were wet, his mucous membrane, he informed her, was in a most unsatisfactory condition. Now the doctor arrived and said that Tibby was quite bad. Might it really be best to accept Aunt Julie's kind offer and to send her down to Howard's End with a note? Running downstairs into the library, she cried, "Yes, I have changed my mind. I do wish that you would go." There was a train from King's Cross at 11. At 10:30, Tibby fell asleep, and Margaret was able to drive her aunt to the station. "Give my letter to Helen, and say whatever you feel yourself, but do keep clear of the relatives. We have scarcely got their names straight yet." They were in plenty of time for the train. Mrs. Munt, though she took a second-class ticket, was put by the guard into a first. Margaret, on her return to Wickham Place, was confronted with the following telegram. "All over. Wish I had never written. Tell no one. Helen." But Aunt Julie was gone, and no power on earth could stop her. The train sped northward. It was only an hour's journey, but Mrs. Munt had to raise and lower the window again and again. The station for Howard's End was at Hilton, one of the large villages that are strung so frequently along the North Road. Being near London, it had not shared in the rural decay. "I want a house," she confided to the ticket boy. "Its name is Howard's Lodge. Do you know where it is?" "Mr. Wilcox," the boy called. "She's wanting Howard's End." There was nothing for it but to go forward, though Mrs. Munt was too much agitated even to stare at the stranger. But remembering that there were two brothers, she had the sense to say to him, "Excuse me asking, but are you the younger, Mr. Wilcox, or the elder?" "The younger. Can I do anything for you?" "Oh, well," she controlled herself with difficulty. "Really, are you? She moved away from the ticket boy and lowered her voice. "I am Miss Schlegel's aunt. I ought to introduce myself, oughtn't I? My name is Mrs. Munt." She was conscious that he raised his cap and said quite coolly, "Oh, rather. Miss Schlegel is stopping with us. Did you want to see her?" "Possibly." "I'll call you a cab. No, wait a mo." He thought. Our motor's here. I'll run you up in it." "That is very kind." She was more civil than she had intended. "Not at all. If you'll just wait till they bring out a parcel from the office, you'll see Miss Schlegel at lunch. You're coming up to lunch, I hope?" "I should like to come up," said Mrs. Munt, not committing herself to nourishment until she had studied Helen's lover a little more. He seemed a gentleman, but had so rattled her round that her powers of observation were numbed. She settled herself into a luxurious cavern of red leather. "You see, we heard from Helen this morning." As soon as they turned into the Great North Road, she opened fire. "You can well imagine," she said, "that the news was a great shock to us." "What news?" "Mr. Wilcox," she said, "Margaret has told me everything. I have seen Helen's letter." He could not look her in the face, as his eyes were fixed on his work, but he inclined his head in her direction and said, "Beg pardon, I didn't catch." "About Helen, of course. Helen is a very exceptional person. I am sure you will let me say this, feeling towards her as you do. I come in no spirit of interference, but it was a great shock." "I'm sorry to be so dense," said the young man, "but I still haven't quite understood." "Helen, Mr. Wilcox, my niece, and you." He pushed up his goggles and gazed at her, absolutely bewildered. Horror smote her to the heart, for even she began to suspect that they were at cross purposes and that she had commenced her mission by some hideous blunder. "Miss Schlegel and myself?" he asked, compressing his lips. "I think I catch your meaning. What an extraordinary mistake!" "Then you didn't—" "Scarcely, as I am already engaged to another lady." There was a moment's silence, and then he caught his breath and exploded.